So good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming this morning, and good morning to everyone watching at home on the live stream. Nice to see you. My name is Robbie Harrigan. I'm the Business Development Specialist for Yakima Cryo Hops here in Europe. My role is to roll out our hops to homebrewers all across Europe. So today, or this morning rather, we're going to discuss cryo hops, which is a product proprietary to us, and how those can be used, how those are produced, and what benefits they have to you as brewers. So yeah, let's get started. So yeah, we like to start every presentation with a little overview of the company, who we are, what we're about, what we like to do in the market, and why we do what we do. So yeah, we have our mission, vision, and values. Our mission is to connect our family hop farms with the world's finest brewers and to provide the highest quality hop products and uncompromising service to the ultimate benefit of our consumers, employees, and growers. And our vision is to be the global hop supplier of choice. We want our passion for preserving the planet, treating people with respect and dignity, and our commitment to healthy communities to be reflected in every beer brewed with our hops. And then we have our pride statement at the bottom of the screen here. Our pride statement, our values are passion, respect, integrity, dedication, and excellence. So we like to apply that to all levels of the brewing industry, from the very largest macro breweries down to someone brewing 20 litres in their garage at home. We like to treat everybody the same. So that's the really important takeaway here today, is that you have passion and dedication for everyone involved in the brewing industry. So yeah, a little background on the company. I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with Yakima Cryo Hops. Obviously, we're a global company. We work worldwide. We're proud to be the only hop company that's 100% grower-owned. So you can see here an overview of our grower owners. We've got 14 grower owners, all who obviously supply hops to us, alongside an additional 50 families throughout the Pacific Northwest region. So some of our families have been growing hops in the Pacific Northwest since the 19th century. And we'd like to think that knowledge and that experience really helps us to produce the highest quality hops and bring the highest quality hops into the market. So yeah, really proud to work for these growers and represent these growers, and proud to be the only hop company that's owned by hop growers 100%. So a little bit of data on Yakima Cryo Hops, just to get an idea of where we fit into the market. So from the 2021 crop, we received approximately 40 million pounds of hops. That equates to around 18,000 metric tons of hops, which represents about 40% of the overall crop from the USA. So a few hops there, you could say. As before, we've got 15 family-operated farms. They provide 56% of the harvest volume that we take in. And again, we work with around 50 allied growers that we're linked to, who regularly supply hops to us, who provide around 44% of that harvest volume. We've got around 290 full-time employees worldwide, and obviously there's a lot of work to be done at harvest time, so we rely on a good quantity of seasonal workers to help on the farms, to help in the picking and processing facilities, and obviously we have a really strong apprentice and internship scheme as well. So another point of difference for us is that we have a scheme known as Return to Grower, so being grower-owned. On average, we return an estimated 78% of our revenues from our hop sales back into the farms, both the grower owners and the allied growers, so we can continue investing in, improved equipment, improved processes to help us develop products such as cryo, which we're going to look at today, as well as some other products and some research that we'll look at this afternoon if you guys are here for that one. So yeah, we like to just return as much of that revenue into the farms just to continue improving and developing and innovating as well. So yeah, something else that we're super proud of. So a little background on cryo. I mean, people at home and people in the audience here today, are you guys familiar with cryo or heard of cryo? Not so much. A few yeses, few nos. So that's good. That's why we're here today. So anyone who's not heard of cryo, we're going to get really into it today and give you a background on how those hops are produced, why they were produced in the first place, and how you guys can use them, and why you should use them, and what benefit they bring to you. So in around 2015, the first prototypes of cryo hops were first produced. The idea was first explored. We were looking for an idea of we've got these amazing quality hops that are being produced each year and being harvested. How can we capture as much of that exciting aroma and flavour into the finished beer? How can we capture as much of that? So we're looking to produce a product that really concentrated that flavour. So, yeah, 2015 the idea was first produced. In 2016, the first quantities were then produced at a pilot scale. Alongside that, in sort of 2015, 2016, that's when the New England IPA, hazy, juicy style of beer really started to, gain traction, especially in Europe. Obviously, it had been around in the northeast of the USA for some time. So alongside that, development of cryo initiated. One point that's sort of key to note at this point is cryo hops aren't just for New England IPAs. You can use them in any style of beer, a West Coast IPA, a Belgian blonde ale, a Pilsner, a Saison, whichever beer you want to use. It's all about capturing as much of that raw hop and that flavour as possible. So originally, they were produced into a powdered form. Some people liked them, some people didn't like them too much. They could sometimes cause some issues in the brew house, so we decided to rework the product into a pellet form, which is what you've got here today with you, members of the audience. And then we continue to refine the process and make it bespoke to each hop variety. So each hop variety has a different oil makeup, oil breakdown. So it's very important that each hop is treated differently throughout the process in order to capture as much of the unique characteristics of each hop variety. So as of recently, as of a couple of months ago, cryo hops is now a patented hop process. So we're pleased to say that Yakima Chief has achieved a patent on that process, which means we can talk more about it. We can be a bit more open. The essential background of cryo is it's a separation process. It's all about separating the rich lupulin within the hops from the vegetable material and capturing and processing as much of that lupulin into a finished product. And a cryo, obviously, as you can probably guess, cryo is linked to a low temperature. So we use extremely low temperatures throughout the process in order to preserve as much of those hop aromatics and flavors, and also to remove as much oxygen from the process. Because as you guys know as home brewers here and at home, the biggest enemy to any hop is oxygen. And that can really quickly destroy and degrade those beautiful and delicate hop compounds. So a real sort of brief overview of how the process works. So the standard kiln-dried whole cone hops are entered into the cryo production line. They are cooled to very, very low temperatures. At this point, they are passed through a mechanical sifting process, which separates the lupulin, which is now frozen pretty solid by the liquid nitrogen, which allows it to sort of retain its integrity. That is then captured and separated from the loose leaf, hop cone, bract, and leaf material. That lupulin is then pelleted again at very cold temperatures into the finished product that you guys have got with you today, and you guys can now source in Europe at home. So yeah, as I had said before, cryo hot pellets are designed to provide and capture and retain intense hop flavour and aroma. So this enables you guys as brewers to efficiently dose large volumes of both alpha acid and hop oils without the risk. If any of you guys have brewed really heavily hopped beers at home, you can sometimes find that at very high hopping rates, you can get maybe some astringent flavours or some slightly vegetative flavours, which aren't particularly pleasant, and you don't want that in your beer. You want bright citrus, rich tropical fruit, intense flavours such as that. And again, unlike some other hop products, they can be used anywhere you're usually using hot pellets. There's no difference. We'll get onto sort of how to use them in terms of ratios and weights and quantities. But in terms of using them, use them as you would use a normal hot pellet, which is really great. In terms of varieties, we like to cover all of our product range. So we've got obviously many of our new varieties available in cryo, things such as Talus, Idaho 7, and Sabro. These are available in cryo now. Sort of the classics, or the real favourites, things like Simcoe, Mosaic, Citra, and Equinaut. Equinaut you've got here in the room today with you guys, so we can, we'll look at assessing some of that, or you can take it home with you. And you can just really see what the cryo process does to some of these hops. And I think one of the really interesting angles of cryo is, some of the real classic varieties, some of the varieties that were around for 20, 30, even 40 years. Things like Cascade, Chinook, and Centennial. really to see what the cryo process does to those. I think we're all familiar with those hops. We have an expectation of what those hops bring to the beer, but the cryo process really brings those hops into a new light. So that's a really interesting thing to explore for those, for sure. So the main advantages. So essentially, it's a concentrated hop pellet, and you're looking at concentrating a hop sort of 2 times over. So there's nearly twice the resin content and oil content of conventional T90 hop pellets. And this obviously gives you an intense contribution of hop flavour and aroma. As I mentioned before, there's a reduction in those grassy and vegetal characteristics that can sometimes come about from really high hopping rates. And one, especially at a commercial level, but even at a homebrew level, you're dosing, as we'll go on to, you're dosing at a lower rate because they're more concentrated. So there are yield increases to be had there. So, if you're brewing 50 litres in your garage and you can get maybe another half keg or 12 bottles, it's a winner. So, and obviously at commercial level, that can be thousands of hectolitres over a year for some of the much larger breweries. So, that's almost a bonus there. You're getting this amazing hop flavour, hop character, hop aroma, but you're also getting more beer out the other end, which is, a bonus. So we've got a little experiment here, just to show how that yield increase can sort of be shown, obviously at a very small level. So we've got 2 pint glasses here. One on the left has got 10 grams of Type 90 hop pellets in, and the one on the right has got 5 grams of cryo hop pellets in. And what we're going to do is just dose those with just some room temperature water. So essentially, we talk about that 2-to-1 ratio. You would dose cryo hops at a rate of 50% of conventional T90 hop pellets, and we'll just show how that equates in terms of losses at the end of the process. So there you are. That's up to 30 minutes. So that's in room temperature water, sort of 20 to 30 degrees. Excuse me. It's already after 30 minutes. You can see that sediment is starting to form. It's a bit clearer in the next picture. So that's after 30 minutes. And then we move on to the next slide, and that's after 90 minutes. So you can see there a real big difference. Obviously, with colder temperatures, if you were crashing your vessel, any of that material at the top of the glass would obviously start to settle out. But you can see that's at an equivalent dosage rate between the two products. There's quite a considerable difference in sediment in the vessel there. And another thing to note there is you look on the glass on the right. The consistency of the sediment is different. It's a lot finer. It's a lot more compact. You can see maybe some pockets and some gaps in the sediment on the left there, which again, if you were draining your vessel, might come out in sort of big pockets of oxygen, or air, I should say, which would start to disturb the sediment bed in the vessel there. So really consistent particle size. You'll see that when we look at some of these hops in person. They're really fine particles, really consistent, which again is down to the way they're processed. Just to repeat some of the points we've gone over so far. You can look at both a macro brewing level and also home brewing level. Increases in production, so you're getting more beer at the end of your process. Again, you're dosing higher concentrations of oils and alpha acids for greater efficiency. And that liquid nitrogen used throughout the process really helps produce that low temperature, low oxygen environment, which produces higher quality hop aromas, which are more stable as well. At no point through the process have these hops seen anything other than cold temperatures, which is super important throughout the supply chain, but especially at the point of production when the hops are in their rawest form. But obviously throughout shipping and storage, we'd look for everyone to maintain those conditions as well, just to really help capture those hop flavours and aromas. So how to brew with cryo hops. So one thing we'd recommend, obviously they have a much higher alpha acid. For everyone in the room here, you've got some cryo equinox. If you look at the foil, you can see the alpha acid content on there, I think is around 23 to 24%, which is pretty potent. So you think that's a great option for bittering, but also you've got lots of aroma and flavour in there. So you don't want to boil that for 60 minutes because all you're going to do is just boil away those lovely flavours and aromas, and that's not why these hops were produced. So we would say use these hops as late on as you can, so anywhere onwards from late kettle, so boiling for 5 minutes before the end of your boil, especially in the whirlpool, and then heavily in the fermenter or the conditioning vessel as well. So for whirlpool additions, dry hop additions is really where you start to see the benefit from an aroma and flavour point of view from these cryo hops. So in terms of dosing rates, we've got a comparison here between standard Type 90 hop pellets, some other concentrated pellets on the market from other hop companies, and our own cryo hops. So as I said before, you're looking about 50% by weight. So if you guys are dosing 100 grams of Citra T90, we would say as a starting point, dose 50 grams of Citra cryo to get an equivalent flavour and aroma. As I said before, use those anywhere you're currently using either whole cone hops or T90 pellets. There's no special way to use them. Obviously, maybe not 60 minutes for boiling because you're just going to evaporate all of those lovely characteristics. Start at maybe 40 to 50% of what you're using in T90 by weight. Dry hop for sure is where you're going to see a huge impact. One important thing to remember is every brewery is different, every home brewer is different, everyone has their preferred methods and techniques. There's no real right or wrong apart from, as I said before, wouldn't recommend boiling them for 60 minutes. Many brewers use them at 100% instead of T90. Many brewers like to use a blend of them to maybe retain some of that slight green, grassy characteristic you can get from T90 pellets. A little calculation here. If you were previously using 50 grams of T90, maybe a recommendation would be to use 10 grams of T90 and 20 grams of cryo to replace that 50 grams. You might be looking for a bit of that green or grassy characteristics, but some people might just want full-on juice, fruit juice characteristics, citrus, tropical. So again, the choice is yours. So there's no real rules here. Play around with it, experiment, and see what works for you, really. So now I've got some slides here that we will look at just in how, there's some other hop pellets on the market, other concentrated hop pellets, and how T90 pellets, our cryo pellets compare to those. So some other concentrated pellets are produced in a very similar way to conventional Type 90 hop pellets. So they are broken up and sifted multiple times. Now, the issue with multiple passes through sieves is it can obviously introduce oxygen and heat into the process. And some of this hop material might actually end up being blended back into the final product. So you guys might have heard the term T45 hop pellets. So again, that number refers to the percentage of the vegetable material that is present in the final pellet. We don't actually refer to cryo with that form. We prefer to just describe them as cryo because the process is different. So again, some of these concentrated pellets are pelleted in an environment that's quite rich in oxygen in comparison to cryo, and at higher temperatures, sometimes above 52 degrees C. And the thing here is this, obviously at higher temperatures, those oils are more sticky, they're more viscous, and this can result in a higher risk of oxidation. So in terms of how that compares to cryo, as I've said before, liquid nitrogen is employed throughout the process, which is super important to produce that environment that is, extremely cold. We're talking many, many degrees below zero. And obviously these low temperatures produce an environment that is also low in oxygen. So we maintain these conditions throughout. The patented technology allows us to pellet these cryo hops below 27 degrees, so there's no risk of oxidation or some of these hop compounds being affected by heat. Our hops are only passed through this sifting process once, so this minimal sort of physical agitation of the hops allows for greater preservation of these delicate and volatile hop compounds, which results in a product that is higher in hop aroma and flavour. Whereas some other concentrated pellets, as I mentioned before, may be sifted numerous times, which is not good for the hops really. So you don't want to handle the hops as much as you want to handle the hops as little as possible really to maintain the integrity of them. So benefits of using them. As I said, we've got a really tightly controlled, nitrogen-rich, cold chain that these hops pass through. So the moment those hops are picked, they're cleaned, they're then dried, they're put into bales, and then they're cold. So the last time they see any kind of room temperature is when they're on the farm. After that, and then through the production facilities, they are kept cold at all times. We are exploring whether we can keep them even colder and how that benefit, if there's any benefit there compared to maybe the extra cost to keep them even colder, because obviously it's not cheap to keep hops at frozen temperatures, so there's some balances to find there. Again, you'll see when we look at the hops in person, and if you guys at home pick up any cryo hops, you'll see that there's a real uniform particle size, really consistent, really fine, smooth particle size, which is really useful through the brew house. You guys might have used, obviously, whole cone hops have a greater risk, but some T90 hot pellets that have maybe some quite large particles, maybe some bits of leaf or strig or even some stem in there as well. You've got a resin content here that's about twice of T90 hot pellets, which obviously results in a much higher contribution of hop quality and hop flavour and aroma. So again, by removing a lot of this vegetable material at the point of production, we're reducing some of those vegetable and polyphenol characteristics, which, if you're dosing a New England IPA at 20 grams per litre, can sometimes, be a bit too intense. And one thing that's really interesting, and there's lots of research going on by numerous hop companies around the world, you guys might be familiar with the phenomenon known as hop creep, if you've sort of read on that or discussed that. So again, when using extremely high hopping rates, you can sometimes introduce a lot of enzymes into the beer, which can break down some of those residual sugars, which if you've ever maybe experienced it, you've got a bottle or a keg. I've got some people nodding in the audience here that you try and pour it. I guess best case is you've got lots of foam. Worst case is you've got a vessel that could, in theory, explode, which is obviously, it's dangerous and it's a risk, especially at a commercial point of view. There's research going on into that. But essentially, if you're using cryo hops, you're putting less physical weight into the beer. You're reducing that input of vegetable material. So in turn, you're lowering that risk of hop creep. Lots of research being done on that. As a company, we've got a fantastic R&D team over in the US, and the lab team who are doing lots of work on how hop creep can be differs through different varieties. Some hops contribute more of these enzymes, some contribute less. So, what can we do to kind of minimize that? So, another impact of cryo, especially at commercial level, if you're a brewery who uses thousands of kilos of one variety per year and you switch to cryo, suddenly you're shipping half that weight, which saves you room in your brew house or in your storage. But also from an environmental point of view, you're shipping less weight, so there's less shipments of hops. So there's less impact from an environmental point of view. And then, as I mentioned before, you've got that increased yield at the end of the day into your final vessel. So again, if you guys are brewing an IPA and you can get an extra 6 bottles or cans, great, you've got more beer to enjoy. So and obviously commercially, you could be looking at saving thousands and thousands of euros a year. So what I've got here, and I will supply these to the guys at Browland actually, there are some. It's a bit hard to read on the screen here, but we've got some sort of sample recipes here that you can look at. We'll supply some printouts of these for sure, and some PDFs through Browland of just some sample recipes. So we've got some Talus, we've got some Equinot, and it just shows you where to use them, perhaps some hops that they work best with. So as I say, if you can see here that in these instances, these cryo hops are being used just in the dry hop for these particular recipes. So, and actually they've got 2 different dry hop stages for each of these beers. So, we can discuss things like post-fermentation dry hops or active fermentation dry hops. I believe our colleague from Lallemand is going to discuss maybe things like biotransformation in the next presentation, which will be really interesting to see how those yeast and hops interact. So, again, lots of research being done into this. It's not a simple topic by any means, but I know some of these yeast companies in particular are really diving into this and seeing how biotransformation works and how we can get the best out of it. So that's it for the presentation. We've got an email address here which is bespoke to Homebrew in Europe. So those go straight through to myself. So that's homebrew.eu@yakimachief.com. So if you've got any questions about cryo hops, we can go through some questions from the audience at home and online. Here we are. So yeah, you can send some questions to me via email, but we're going to go through some questions now. So I've got a couple of questions from our online viewers, which I'll go through now, and then I'll open up some questions to you guys in the audience, if that's okay. So yeah, I've got a question from Indelenberg. She's asked, what's Yakima? Is it a village in California? So Yakima is a region in Washington State, so in the Pacific Northwest, the northwest of the USA, just below Canada. So Yakima is a region just south of Seattle. It's actually, Yakima is derived from one of the native tribes over in the US. And I've got another question, actually, all from the same person, actually, so thank you for all these questions, is how long can we keep cryo hops? It's kind of a difficult question to answer, is hops don't have a specific expiry date. Because they are a product that goes into the food chain, we have to put a best before date on them by law. So we put 3 years on. But you guys, anyone brewing at home and also here in the audience, know that if you keep them frozen, keep them as cold as possible, those hops can last for far longer than that. And it's all about keeping them as cold as possible and minimizing that introduction of oxygen as well. And another question from our friend here is how to use your hops in a hop. Do you use your hops in a hop bag in the fermenter? Do you pour the cryo hops in a hop bag and then dry hop in the fermenter, or just without hop bag? Depends on your equipment. If you've got a vessel that maybe with a small outlet or is with a flat bottom, you can sometimes have issues with the sediment clogging up your outlet. If you've got a conical vessel, again, you'd look to cool that vessel. Those hops would settle down into the cone of the vessel, and then you can just extract the beer from above that. So it's kind of a difficult question to answer. If you have difficulties with maybe when you're draining your vessel, you're getting hot matter coming through, maybe a hop bag would work better for you. But as I say, with cryo hops, you're putting half the weight in, so that might minimize issues such as that. So yeah, and I've got a question on growing hops, what type of fertilizer to use. That's not one I can really answer, but certainly our growers would know the answer to that. Yeah, there's lots of different products used throughout the growing process. So I won't attempt to answer that one for fear of giving you poor advice. So, but thank you very much for those questions. So yeah, do you guys here in the audience have any questions based on the presentation?
Yeah.
Want to hear at the front?
Since the cryo hops have less vegetable material in it,
Mm-hmm.
does it mean that during dry hopping you can leave them in the beer for longer?
Great question. So the question here, just to repeat for the audience at home, is due to the reduced vegetable matter in the hops, can you leave those hops in the fermenter? Obviously, one of the issues with leaving hops in too long is you do extract more of those vegetable characteristics. I would say probably yes. Our recommendation generally would be to dry hop for something like 72 hours anyway. After that, it's again, lots of research being done. Are you gaining anything more from the hops? Whether it's an issue if you're going on holiday and you've dry hopped, maybe it's something like that. Hard to say. Again, every beer is different, every brewery is different. We would say no more than 72 hours, but again, you are putting less vegetable material in there, so you are going to get less vegetative qualities. So yeah, I would say yes, in short. But again, after a certain amount of time, you're not getting any more from those hops. So, thank you for the question. Great question. Any other questions here in the audience? No, we have had another one come through online, which is cryo hops need to be cold. Do cryo hops need to be cold shipped? And how do they respond to freeze thaw cycles? So again, no different to pellets. In an ideal world, yes, we would say ship the hops cold. But as I'm sure the guys here at Browland would agree, sending out small parcels that are frozen with a frozen vehicle it's a logistical issue, but also it's going to be quite expensive. So yes, if those hops are being shipped from a cold storage, such as here at Browland, in 24 hours to be delivered to the customer the next day, and they're then placed in the freezer at the end user's home, I would say it's absolutely fine. Yes, ideally we would ship them frozen and maintain that frozen supply chain throughout the whole process, but we need to be slightly realistic about what we can achieve. So, and the second part to that question was, how do they respond to freeze-thaw cycles? Ideally, what you don't want to be doing is multiple times getting these hops out of the freezer, thawing them, freezing them, thawing them, freezing them, because those change in temperature won't be too beneficial to the hops. That's why these hops we've started producing are in 25-gram foils. So the idea is that chances are you're going to use all of that in one go. If you do have a larger format, we do produce these in 1 kilos. We would say get them from the freezer, quickly weigh out what you need and get them straight back in the freezer, so the chances are they won't have time to thaw out. What you don't want to do is weigh your hops out, leave them on the shelf for 2 days, let them get warm, and then put them back in the freezer, because then that's when you run into issues. So be as quick as you can. But as I say, with these smaller foils, the idea is that you're going to use all of those in one moment. You're not going to be using those. You might be using very, very small. I imagine all you guys sort of brew sort of 20 litres approximately, something like that, 20 to 50 litres, if not more. So, you might use 5 grams, but the chances are you're going to use that whole foil. So, hopefully that answers your question. Be as sort of delicate as you can with the hops and try not to expose them to any extremes in terms of temperature, storage, anything like that. So, thank you for the question. Another great question. So, do we have any more questions from you guys here in the audience? What we might want to do is, if you wanted to, obviously we can't get the viewers at home involved in this, but I do have some more samples. If you wanted to maybe open that foil and just explore the product, we can do some more of that later today and just, have a feel for the product. Anyone who's not explored cryo hops before, to really get an understanding of what they're about. So I encourage you to open those foils and explore them. There are more where they came from, so we can look at those. We've got some other varieties to look at today. And actually, we have just had another question come through, so we can go through that. Again, from Geert again. So is the hop flavour more stable in the beer from cryo hops? Again, it depends on what the beer is, how you're brewing, how much hops you're adding. But yes, I would say generally we have a more flavour stable profile in the beer. Again, because you're inputting less of that vegetable material, which can contain some polyphenol character, which can then reduce, bring some off flavours in further down the line. And again, more stability from a flavour point of view, but then more stability in terms of a storage point of view, as we discussed about the issue with hop creep. So generally you would get a more stable product into package. So thank you for the question. Great, so we've got, no more questions online, no more questions for the guys in the audience, so we will finish things up there, I think. So thank you very much for your time. As I say, we've got the email address, if we can pop that back up on the screen, there it is, homebrew.eu@yakimachief.com. Any questions you've got about the products, about the company, about anything to do with Yakima Chief, please send those to me, and I will, if I can't answer them, if the question's on fertilizer, which I can't answer, I can certainly put you in touch with someone who can answer that question. We've got a great team in the US, obviously the growers, but we've got a grower relations team as well. We've got our Yakima Chief Ranchers team who are in charge of the development of new hop varieties. So huge resources over there who I'm confident can ask any questions you guys might have. So thank you very much for your time. And we'll see you this afternoon for the other presentation. Thank you. Cheers, guys.